What if the key to protecting our brains wasn't in some high-tech lab or a pharmacy, but right in our own kitchens? It's one of the biggest health questions out there right now. So let's dive in and really investigate the link between what we eat and our brain health for the long haul. First, to really get why this matters so much, you have to understand the scale we're talking about. Right now, as we speak, more than 55 million people all over the world are living with dementia. That's a huge number. But honestly, it's where that number is heading that's truly alarming. Just look at these projections from the World Health Organization. They expect that number to soar to 78 million by 2030. And then it almost doubles again to a massive 139 million by 2050. That creates this incredible urgency, right? We have to find ways to lower our risk. And that brings us right back to the central question of this whole explainer. With no cure on the immediate horizon, we've got to focus on prevention. So could our diet really be one of the most powerful tools we have in our arsenal? Well, experts certainly think so. There's this great quote from Dr. Christopher Weber at the Alzheimer's Association that I think says it all. What is good for the heart is good for the head. This idea that our heart health and our brain health are just deeply connected. That's really the foundation for everything we're about to explore. So what does a brain-healthy diet even look like? All right, let's look at the two main suspects. First, you've got the famous Mediterranean diet. You know the one, tons of fruits, veggies, nuts, olive oil, and fish. But then there's the MIND diet. And this one is really interesting because it's a hybrid, specifically designed to include foods that seem to protect our brain from degeneration. You'll notice it really doubles down on green leafy vegetables and berries, which are absolutely packed with brain-protective nutrients. Now, a quick heads up here. Most of the big studies on this are observational. That just means they show a strong connection or correlation, not necessarily a direct cause and effect. But the pattern is so consistent, it's compelling. People who stick to these kinds of diets tend to have slower cognitive decline. So if some foods help, it kind of makes you wonder, could other foods be hurting? And yeah, it works both ways. Dr. Weber confirms it. The evidence linking a poor diet, one that's full of unhealthy fats and sugar, to a higher risk for dementia is just as strong. So let's flip the script and investigate the main culprits. So the main bad guy in this story really seems to be ultra-processed foods. We're talking about things with lots of refined carbs and additives, but one category in particular is linked to some pretty shocking stats: processed meats. Yeah, I'm talking about sausages, salami, bacon, that sort of thing. And this chart really puts it in perspective. One huge study found that regularly eating processed meat was linked to a 44% increased relative risk for developing any kind of dementia. But for Alzheimer's specifically, that number jumped to a staggering 52%. I mean, those are numbers that are just really hard to ignore. Okay, so you might be wondering, well, if certain nutrients are so good for my brain, can I just take a supplement? Shortcut the whole thing and just pop a pill? It's a great question, and the evidence is, well, it's complicated. For instance, there was this fascinating study on rats where omega-3 supplements seem to completely wipe out the memory problems caused by processed diet. Pretty cool, right? But, and this is a really big but, that just hasn't panned out in human studies. The World Health Organization is pretty clear on this. Right now, a healthy diet and regular exercise are way more powerful than any pill you can take. All right, let's move on to another really confusing topic: alcohol. One day you hear a glass of red wine is a miracle cure. The next day you hear any amount is bad for you. It's confusing. So let's see what the science actually says. The evidence is kind of split. On one hand, the science is crystal clear. Heavy drinking is a major risk factor for dementia. Full stop. No debate there. But here's where it gets weird. Some studies show that moderate drinkers actually have a lower risk of dementia than people who don't drink at all. So what on earth is going on? Well, that protective effect probably isn't from the alcohol itself. It's likely something scientists call a confounding factor. Basically, it turns out people who drink moderately also tend to exercise more, eat better, and be more social, all things that we know are great for our brains. So the benefit isn't coming from the wine glass, it's coming from the healthy lifestyle. So what's the deep biological mechanism that ties all of this together? The good food, the bad food, the lifestyle? Well, scientists are increasingly zeroing in on this key concept: inflammaging. It's the theory that this constant low-grade inflammation simmering in our bodies as we get older is a major driver of age-related diseases, and that includes dementia. So where does all this inflammation come from? According to Professor Tim Spector, one of the leading researchers in this area, the big clue is in our gut. As he says, study after study is pointing to the same conclusion. People with dementia tend to have unhealthy gut microbiomes. This is the critical missing link that connects what's on our plate to what's happening in our brain. And here's how it all works, broken down into 4 pretty simple steps. Step 1, a poor diet, low in fiber, high in processed junk, harms those trillions of good microbes in our gut. Step 2, this unhappy microbiome starts sending out inflammatory signals all over the body. Step 3, that inflammation becomes so chronic that it can actually get past the blood-brain barrier, which is supposed to protect our brain. And finally, step 4, that inflammation in the brain is what scientists believe raises the risk for dementia. And this isn't just a theory. We can actually see the evidence. Studies have found that people with dementia have way fewer of the good anti-inflammatory gut bacteria, like a group called Bacteroides. And at the same time, they have more of the microbes that are known to stir up inflammation. Their whole gut ecosystem is different. Professor Spector just sums it up so perfectly here. It's a chain reaction. A bad diet messes up your gut microbes, which messes up your immune system, which leads to inflammation and then, potentially, cognitive decline. This whole idea of inflammaging is really the leading theory right now. So, what's the verdict? What can we actually do about all this? Well, it really boils down to this 4-point action plan. First, eat a huge variety of plants to feed your good gut bugs. Some experts say to shoot for 30 different plants a week. Second, really try to limit those ultra-processed foods we talked about. Third, remember, diet is just one piece of the puzzle. You've got to combine it with regular exercise. And finally, keep your brain sharp by staying social and learning new things. The most important takeaway here, I think, is a message of empowerment. Like Dr. Weber says, we don't have to just sit around and wait for some miracle cure. We are not powerless here. There are real, tangible things we can start doing today that may genuinely lower our risk as we get older. And that really just leaves us with one final, crucial question. This isn't about changing your entire life tomorrow. It's about starting somewhere small. So after hearing all of this, what's one small, totally doable change you can make for your brain starting today?